Hello, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us for the first of our mental health webinar series. My name is Dr. Claudia Marshall, and I am a co-founder and the director of counseling for the Achieve a Dream Foundation. As we all know, the pandemic has had a great impact on our world, right? And the Achieve a Dream Foundation, because we are here to support student athletes in a holistic manner, which includes taking in consideration their mental health, we have put together a series of webinars with, expert panelists to kind of share their knowledge regarding how the pandemic has been impacting the mental health of student athletes, whether they're in high school, whether they are in college, and just the general population. So I'm just so excited to have this group of licensed psychologists and mental health advocate here to provide you with some information regarding how you can support yourself, how you can cope with these difficult times. So without further ado, I am going to have our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Dr. DeLon.
Hi, good evening. Dr. Daylon Isom. I am a clinical and school psychologist located in Washington, D.C., currently working in the counseling service at Howard University. And I also, as I shared with some of the panelists before, have been an athlete in the past, all the way through college, competed in track and field at Texas A&M University, and have just been really dedicated and driven to advance the work of mental health and destigmatizing mental health in Black and Brown communities and in underserved populations. And I also am the owner of my own psychological and educational consulting service. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. And then we have Dr. Jamie Banks.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Jamie Banks. I'm a psychologist. I'm in the kind of Ann Arbor, Detroit area in Michigan. I work at the University of Michigan in their counseling center. And I'm just happy to be here tonight on the panel just to share some wisdom and have conversations with other mental health professionals, and always an advocate for destigmatizing mental health, especially within BIPOC communities. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Banks. Miss Alicia Edwards.
Good night, everyone. So my name is Alicia Edwards. I am a mental health advocate right here in Jamaica. I've been working with the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network for about 3 years now. I always say it's like my life purpose. Mental health is just a special topic to me. I've really been dedicated to normalizing the conversation, especially in the Caribbean culture and society. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. And last but definitely not least, Shoya Gay. Shoya Gay, are you with us? I think you're muted.
Sorry about that, guys. My bad. Hi, guys. I'm Shoya Gay Grant Massicot. I'm a clinical psychologist from Jamaica, living in Dominica. I'm a lecturer as well. And I'm a clinical psychologist at the Dominica State College. I'm the owner of my own private online practice. And I'm just really happy to be here tonight because I'm particularly passionate about student athletes because I know how much the whole sports industry has done for the Caribbean on the international stage. But at the same time, we don't give as much attention to the mental health of those who are putting us out there. So I'm really happy to be here to shed light on this and just to be a part of the panel. Okay,
yes,
thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. And again, we appreciate you coming here and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. So we're going to just jump into it so that we can get this discussion going, right? So there's no doubt that 2020 was a really difficult year, right? There was a lot of cancellation of sporting events. A lot of student athletes, whether domestically or internationally, didn't really get to go out there and showcase their ability, and might have missed out on opportunities to gain athletic scholarships. There was the social distancing priorities or laws or policies that were in place, and that might have caused some isolation. So from your experience, what do you think just cancellation of sports and isolation as a result of social distancing, what kind of mental health impact can that have on an individual?
Okay, so I can take that one. From with Jamaica, sports is track alone is like Jamaica's bread and butter. But when, because the high school kids in Jamaica, you have champs, which is like national championships. When that was canceled, I mean, this is an event that a lot of kids going with, like, because you have people looking to give them scholarships for when they reach the further education. That's when they normally get their sports scholarships. So when that was canceled, a lot of them were in a depressed and anxious state, because that's the event they were looking forward to see that, they could get a college scholarship, do track, go pro. So it was a really trying time. But then, I mean, that event being canceled, that's been going on for years. It was really like a setback.
And like, we don't even take into consideration just how much people practice. Like they practice and they put in a whole lot of work, and they are looking forward to this so much, and then COVID, everything is canceled. So there's a whole disappointment. But even more than that, like we have to understand that track and sports in general, for a lot of people, for a lot of student athletes, it's a huge part of their identity. So it's like, if this is not happening, then like, who am I, what's my purpose, and all of those kind of things. And also we have to realize as well that they are going through a lot of mental health issues, and track is like a saving grace. It's like coping mechanism. It's where they can let out the anger. It's where they can distract themselves from what's going on, and when that is taken away, and you're locked in a house or locked in all of those, and you can't express your emotions, or you're locked in with the people who are the object of your frustration or the reason for all of that, and there's no outlet, then you just see the spiral of even psychological disorders and those kind of things developing rapidly.
Yeah, you just said a mouthful. You kind of covered a lot of things that I was thinking too, both of you. I think even before we get to the athletic part, though, just the pandemic by in and of itself, right, was kind of like anxiety provoking for people. This virus that you can't really see, that people that you may know have passed from or are sick from, and you don't really know kind of what's going on. So I think just the virus and the sickness itself, and then the uncertainty around it, could create a lot of stress for people. And then now that it has this stressor going already, and we're talking about being able to engage in athletics to get away from some of that stress, that's taken away. So now the coping mechanisms that we generally go to are taken away from us. And so I definitely agree with what you have been saying about just how one thing on top of the other has kind of exacerbated it. And it's definitely impacted many athletes and many people in general just from the onset, impacting their mental health in some of the more negative ways and more significant ways.
Yeah.
And just to add, like it was said, everybody kind of said everything. I think, some research would say, like, connection is like a basic need. And, isolation every now and then is it's good. It's good to be away from people. But when the pandemic hit and it was unwanted and forced, I think that's when people were like, this is not what I want. I'm not about this life. I remember doing an outreach earlier in the fall, and it had some actually athletes in it. So I was glad to see them. And they were like, what I missed the most is kind of connection with my teammates. At that time, I think they were gearing up to play, but it was like the connection. I don't know how I can connect in a safe way, and they're not really letting us connect at all. And so I think just that basic need being taken away and being isolated can just result in the loneliness, the depressed mood, the feeling low, poor sleep quality, all that stuff, which then can impact your actual physical health. So somebody who's already like, the athletics part is being taken away, and your coping strategy of engaging in the sport, which keeps up your physical health, now you have all these things that are impacting your mental health that thereby can impact your physical health and your immunity. So it's like we said, it's just things on top of things that can, I think, that has impacted a lot of people and athletes too.
Yeah, thank you all so much. So you all have made great points of just making that connection when it comes to that mind-body connection, right? And how the mental health can perpetuate different physical health issues. And if you don't really deal with those or have the outlets to cope with those, then you're caught in this vicious cycle, right? And not being able to compete, even when we get back to that point. So with that, I guess what I'm interested in knowing is, how can someone tell that their mental well-being or their mental health is being impacted? Like, what are some signs or symptoms that they can look for in themselves or in their teammates or loved ones to see that their mental well-being is being impacted?
I think Dr. Banks was kind of hitting on some of those already, just like the insomnia, maybe, you're sleeping a lot, or maybe you're not sleeping enough. Maybe your appetite is impacted. Maybe you're overeating or you're not eating enough. Maybe just daily you might, have a depth and breadth of emotions, but you might find that you're always sad, or you're always feeling like empty or worthless or hopeless in some way. So there's some of those things that, typically if they occur one or 2 days and then it kind of subsides, then that's not something to be of concern. But when you start to recognize that these things are persistent and ongoing, and other people start to call them out or recognize them too, then maybe it is time to start to think about, maybe my mental health is taking a toll, or this is taking a toll on my mental health rather, and maybe it is time for me to start seeking, professional assistance. But just really being in tune and in touch with your thoughts and your body and your emotions, and really doing that self-check daily to figure out if these are things that are occurring every single day, or if it's kind of like one and done.
Yeah. And with that being said, I think we mentioned before, like the physical aspect. So a lot of people, the thoughts are there and so on, and the feelings of helplessness. So you're accustomed to getting up and jumping out of bed, right? But you're tired and you don't want to do anything. You're not interested in doing the things that you like to do before, those kind of things. But what we sometimes miss are the physical signs, and we don't pinpoint them to mental health. So all of these aches and pains, these somatic disorders, somatic illnesses, so or physical illnesses with a psychological basis. So it's like headache, tension, everywhere hurting, or you're not able to function, you're just achy all over. The fact that stress, again, compromises the immune system, so you're catching everything and all of that. So the physical aspect is one way to identify when you are under stress.
And just to add, to piggyback off of what everyone said, I like that self-check. I think even talking to students now through the pandemic, it's just trying to create that normalcy at first, but then getting into this routine. And then I think we can go through the motions and not really check in with ourselves. So even I find myself like getting up, coming to the kitchen table and doing my work. And sometimes I'm not like, not even checking with my physical health, like, because I know when I'm stressed, I carry tension in my shoulders. And if I do this and I'm like, oh shoot, my shoulders are actually up to my ears, I might be a little stressed and tense right now. And maybe I need to actually do a body scan and check in with myself. So I think that self-check is important, because I think we can just go through the motion and go through the days, because it's like, when is this pandemic going to end? I'm just going to keep doing my routine until it does, and not remember to kind of do that daily check. I even like do it in the morning when I wake up, like, how am I feeling in my body? How am I feeling in my mind? Am I focusing too much on one thing? Am I obsessing over it, ruminating over it? And not to take up too much time, but also like, I know some students were having issues that were already having mental health and then didn't know if like, is this just my mental health or am I like, are my feelings actually valid? And it's like, yes, your feelings are valid, you know, because we're not in a normal situation, but also reminding them, when does it go to a little bit to the extreme to where it's not healthy anymore? Because we still do have to live our lives at some point with this.
Yeah, I definitely love that, right? Because a lot of times when we think of mental health, we're only thinking about those thought disorders or the thought related symptoms, right? Those cognitive symptoms. And you guys really alluded to the importance of paying attention to your body. Like, are you feeling tense? Are you starting to feel pains in different areas and it's persistent and that might have not been there before? That might be a sign that, you know, your mental well-being is being impacted, whether it's by the pandemic or now it's being intensified by the pandemic if you already were dealing with different mental health issues before. So I really love, again, how you guys are just tying in that mind-body connection and really paying attention to that. So with them paying attention and checking in with their bodies and their minds and their thoughts and the changes in behaviors and moods, right? What are some strategies that they can implement to kind of ease those short-term symptoms? And I guess it's a double-ended question, like what are some short-term strategies that they can use to kind of cope with those symptoms? And then also, how can they prioritize their mental health, right, by making their mental well-being an ongoing priority?
I would say a strategy they could implement is keeping a schedule, because I find that especially if you know you're anxious, you suffer from anxiety, keeping a schedule and having probably like a list of things to do maybe at a certain time, it would help you feel more like you have things under control. And I find that that will help anxiety a lot, especially with student athletes. You know, you can't really train like that again. So, you know, you do individual training, have your schedule, and yeah, I think that that will help for sure.
Thank you.
I think connection. So, you know, like this whole phrase of social distancing, it's probably like not accurate, because we don't want to socially distance. We want to physically distance, but we want to stay socially connected, you know, and social being connected to people is so important. And like when people are playing sports, it binds them together. It's like a team effort, and then they become like brothers and sisters and all of that. And it's like a home away from home kind of situation. And then you don't have that physical interaction anymore, but it's very important to still keep the social interaction, to talk. Like, thank God for social media and other things that keep us connected. So like you use your Skype and your WhatsApp and you talk to people. You can video call multiple people. You can have like, you can do things that like, you can have like a video chat with your teammates for something. I know people who are watching movies together on the thing, and those kind of things that still, even though we can't physically be in the same space or close to each other, there are things that we can do to still connect socially. And I think that really does help people to feel like they're not alone and to have that connection remained. And it really does help with the mind and mental health in general.
Yeah. I like that, because what I hear you saying too is just like we have to find ways to be creative given the situation and the circumstance. And I think the same can be said for athletics, right? So I know that there are a lot of facilities that are closed down or there are restrictions that are in place, but maybe this is a time that you can get creative and find ways to still meet the goals that you wanted to meet. Maybe I can't bench press today because the gym is closed, but I might be able to work on push-ups and that can, still kind of replace and serve that same purpose. Maybe because of the season in school, when we're meeting in person, I don't get enough time to focus on stretching. I don't get enough time to focus on my core work, my abs. Maybe using this time to now dedicate to improving in those areas, so that when we do open back up and we do return to competition, that's one less thing that you kind of have to worry about, or that you have to put as, put off because you're busy doing everything else. So really just trying to find ways to be creative and still get your goals met. And then lastly, I'll say is just sometimes it also helps to just be reflective. And I mean, like, when I say reflective, I mean like thinking about what's going on with me inside, right? And identifying what the stressors are. If I'm noticing that I'm stressed, I know people were talking about carrying the tension in your body, because I carry it in my shoulders too. If I do notice that, sometimes it helps to just take a step back and think about what it is that's causing that stress, and then finding ways to address that too. Maybe sometimes it's, I was up answering emails till 11 o'clock last night and that's stressing me out. Tomorrow I'm going to cut it off at 6. Like, finding ways to cut out the stresses in your life as best you can also be helpful too for you, and strategies to use.
Just one other thing is, I think, to go along with that is journaling. That's what I was going to say. Some kind of journal, some kind of writing something down, because I think with this pandemic and everything, I think we can get caught up in our heads. And so like that reflection, and I think some people sometimes have expectations for journaling. And it's like, what, just write down a thing or two that happened that day. And maybe it's not something that happened that was good, because I think we can get caught up in the negative and can get caught up in this, the negativity of the pandemic. But what if actually something good did happen during your day? And so being able to know that, and if it's not journaling, what other kind of outlet besides sometimes that sport do you have? Whether that is the music. I'm big on mindfulness and just being in the present moment. And sometimes I don't like the traditional guided mindfulness. I like take your favorite song and really pay attention to the beat and how it makes you feel in your body and how it makes you feel in your heart, and emotionally and mentally, and choosing to focus on that too, because I think that can help us to be in the present moment and also just mindful and reflective.
Yes, I love it. So I'm hearing.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
I think sometimes we see the negative side of things, but like as was mentioned before, there can be positive. And I think when you have, the world was fast paced, right? Everybody was just doing their thing and whatever, and then we just had to stop and we just had to slow down. And I don't think everything about it is bad, because I think even with athletes, and I said it initially with the identity thing, where you feel like that this is all there is to you, but then you can't do this. But then there are so many other things that you can learn to do in the time that you can, learn to cook, bake bread, do different things, like spend time with your little brothers and your little sisters that you wouldn't, because you had to be training and stuff. Like, be paying attention to the people who are around you that you wouldn't normally do, have quality time, because then this pandemic is going to go. It's going to go eventually, and then we're going to get back to reality, and then we're going to miss the slow pace and the quiet and everything. So that now that we have it, to just like savor it and enjoy it and try to get the best that we can possibly get out of the situation, because there's absolutely always good.
Yeah, I definitely love it. So I'm hearing, coming up with a new routine that can kind of give you the same structure that you've had when you were participating in your sports and you had to get up early to go to practice and then go to class. So finding a new routine, right? I'm hearing staying socially connected using the different mediums that you have, whether it's social media, a text group chat, a Zoom, FaceTime, right? Finding creative ways to stay connected to the sports that you enjoy and to continue your physical activity to keep up your physical well-being, right? Finding new creative things to do as it relates to getting new hobbies, right? Practicing mindfulness, using specific strategies like journaling. So yes, these are definitely great tips. And one thing I guess I would add is trying to, kind of disconnect from a lot of the news that's circulating, because when you see a lot of programs cutting their sports, and when you hear about the different rises in the COVID-19 cases and so on, this can also be triggering, right? And become a stressor for you. So kind of limiting the news intake that you're getting, and finding like reliable sources for your news intake as well. I think that would help to kind of reduce the stress that's associated with the pandemic. And we did have a question come through from someone that's watching. So this is Dr. Drummond. How do you navigate that fine line of asking someone how they are feeling, coping without being overly intrusive or excessively repetitive?
I can start this one. I think just simply asking. There's somebody at work who literally every time he asks you how you doing, he gonna stop and be like, how are you doing really? And so I appreciate him for that, because I think sometimes when we're saying how are you doing, especially within Western culture, that's just a hello. That's not like, that's not like I really wanted to know how you were doing. And so I think maybe connecting with someone, chatting with someone, and really be like, how you doing? Like, this has been difficult. And sometimes I will even put it on me. This has been difficult for me. So I just wanted to check in and see how you were doing with everything, how you've been coping. And I think starting maybe out that way, just like, I'm just checking on everybody and trying to stay connected within my circle and make sure my circle is doing okay, or to see if anybody needs anything. And so if you're willing to share, and if, comfortable sharing, I would really like to know how are you doing really?
I love the approach, right? Where you're involving yourself. Is not just, you're not coming off like, hey, it's just, you on the person, but then I'm checking and I just want to know if you're okay. But we also have to respect people's boundaries and their space and where they are at mentally at the moment. So sometimes you ask and you're not doing it with any ill intent and all of that, but then at the moment they're irritated or they're going through something and they give you a kind of response. First of all, don't take it personally. It's not you, right? It's just that they're going through something. And because you understand that it's not you, then you just give them time, because sometimes all people need is just time. So if you realize that the person is not being receptive and not opening up and all of that, just give them time and not be like on them, because that can be like bothersome and that can just seem too much, and then you can end up pushing the person away even further. So ask genuinely, and if the person is receptive, then you have that conversation and you talk. If the person is not, give them time or use a different medium. Some people don't like talking, so probably they prefer texting and so on. So, and if that doesn't work, give them space and respect the time, and then check again later or eventually, or maybe they will just come to you.
Yeah, that's you raised a good point when you ended, because that's one thing that I was just gonna say, is that maybe just sharing with them that if they're not comfortable speaking with you now, like that you're available when they are. So
Yeah.
letting them just leaving that door open for them to come when they are ready, and that way it's not too intrusive and it doesn't feel like you're real pestering. So, but I agree with everything that was said.
Thank you all so much. This is awesome. Like, I am loving the knowledge and the insight that is being shared. So I know we kind of touched on some of the signs and symptoms, and you all talked about, this can be some severe signs and symptoms. So talk a little bit about when these students at least should consider seeking professional help.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree. Okay. I think firstly we have to just understand that we're all going through this, right? We're all having a normal stressful reaction to a stressful situation, right? But not all reactions might be indicative of some kind of disorder and all of that, right? So
Yes.
it's really about first the time frame, right? So if you wake up one day, and I don't remember who said it, but like it's okay to have these things like at intervals or once in a while and so on. You just don't feel like eating today, right? You don't feel like, you're not sleeping a couple of days, you're worried because you don't know what's going to happen as it relates to your scholarship and those kind of things, right? Though, so it happens once in a while, so on, and then you bounce back and so. But if it's continuous, and if it's continuous to the point where it starts to affect your functioning in every different area of your life, then that is when we see that there is a serious problem, and we need to work on it. It's causing you distress, and you're not able to function like you used to. It's past the limit of being normal, and that's when you probably need to consult someone, a professional.
She hit it. She hit it all. I think one thing that I try to share with people, and I know it's something that a lot of colleagues kind of use, especially with athletes and college age students and younger, because there still is just like this lack of understanding around mental health, and then also there is like, of course, the stigma that's just throughout, right? But just trying to like displace it and give them other examples. So if my vision was blurry just one day because something got into it, into my eye, and I got it out and it was fixed, then it's not necessarily a need for me to go to the eye doctor. But if my eye was blurry for 3 weeks, I need to go and talk to the eye doctor. If it was a stomach issue, I'm going to go to the physician. So just the same, if you are having similar issues with your emotions or with how you're feeling, and it's prolonged, as is it Shoye?
Sure, yeah.
Shoya, sorry. As you were saying, then that's when it's important to kind of seek out professional advice and professional guidance. So sometimes just having those different examples help people, because people are okay with going to the eye doctor. People are okay with going to the physician, but there's still some hesitancy around going to see a therapist or a shrink or whatever words are used to describe us because of the stigma that's attached. But if we can start to normalize that it's okay, we all go through these things. We all have emotions. We all have, mountain peaks and valley lows. And it's okay to get assistance when you're going through those things for an extended period. Then I think we'll see a lot more growth, not just in athletes, but just in our people.
Yeah.
And one more thing I just wanted to say directly, and I would be remiss because I'm the suicide prevention coordinator at my job, that if it's to the point too of where you're thinking of suicide, because I don't think we talk a lot, I think that's still a lot that is still stigmatized within communities of color. So if you're having thoughts of suicide, that can be an indicator as well. Again, that's not, that can be something that is a typical response for when you're in distress. We don't want you to stay in that place, but we also know that hopelessness does pop up, especially if you've been dealing with so much stuff, especially with this pandemic, which we know that suicide rates have increased because of this pandemic. And so if there's some thoughts about death or thoughts about, we like to say it directly, killing yourself, then that might be the point too. That is the point to seek professional help, and if you can't get to the professional help, seeking somebody that you do trust that can help you to get that help.
And I just add one more thing, which is if you find that you're losing interest in things that you're really passionate about. For example, student athletes say that my passion is netball. I don't want to do netball anymore. I'm frustrated. So, let me just get into another field or do something else. Like you losing interest in something that was your whole world. That's an indicator as well.
Thank you all so much. And, even talking about engaging in risky behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting to the point where you're using drugs or alcohol or engaging in promiscuous behaviors, right? So those change in behaviors as well. And I really love that you all talked about the suicide piece, because that is something that we kind of tiptoe around a lot of times. And I think it's so important, because when you think about the statistics, especially when it comes to student athletes, it's really a conversation that we need to normalize and destigmatize as much as we want to do for mental health, because that is a part of mental health in general. So thank you all so much. Another question that popped up in the chat is, how can I better manage academics and athletics?
Plan. It's no one right answer. I think in the college space, maybe asking upperclassmen who maybe have those experiences, maybe leaning on your academic advisors, talking to people who have been through it before, who can kind of give you some advice. But at the bare minimum, just coming up with a schedule, as we've been saying ad nauseum at this point, in a routine can definitely help alleviate some of the stress that comes along with trying to manage both. So I think definitely not being afraid to ask for help and getting it wherever you can get it from.
Another one, Jalen Nelson here with UMES Track and Field. What do you think is the best approach for younger student athletes making the transition from high school to college during the pandemic, with all the stress of not competing and being new to college life? So that transition.
I'm really trying to unpack the question. Can you repeat it again, please?
Yes, sure. It is, what do you think is the best approach for younger student athletes making the transition from high school to college during the pandemic, with all the stress of not being able to compete and being new to college life? So I guess, what are some things that they can do to deal with that transition and just the stress of going to college during a pandemic, with the understanding that they might not be able to compete at this time and they are new to college life?
I would say probably find those that are going through the similar things, because I mean, I'm pretty sure you're not alone, and give yourself grace, because it's a pandemic. There is so much going on, so I feel like you can't really look at what happened to other students in the past that were transitioning, because they didn't have this to deal with. So definitely understand the circumstances and don't be so hard on yourself.
Thank you. So practice some self-compassion. Probably find yourself a mentor, someone that, can help you navigate what it's like being in college, because even though it looks different being in college during a pandemic, they can help you with just the basic day-to-day life of what it's like being a freshman in college, and kind of get you acclimated to the climate, and might be there to serve you as a mentor throughout the rest of your matriculation. So definitely find individuals going through the same thing, so to remind yourself that you're not alone, and also find a mentor that can help you to navigate that space. All right, so someone else says, this is Regina White, student athlete at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Many student athletes resort to other student athletes or student athletes for help, advice, or more when they are going through something. What should we do to steer our teammates to the right direction to get professional help without being rude or personal?
She's saying like almost people are coming to them.
They don't want it.
And they don't want them to come to them.
They don't want it.
What can
Well,
we do?
I guess it's to the point where they might need professional help.
Yeah.
So how can they tell them, this is kind of beyond my area of expertise. This is above me right now. So you might need some professional help without being rude.
But I think Dylan like mentioned a little bit about it, like normalize it. A lot of people are not so perky about getting professional help. But if, first of all, if you're selling something, you have to believe in it, right? So it can be like, oh, you need to get professional help or not, but you wouldn't go to a psychologist or you wouldn't go to a therapist. So like if you've had your personal experience and it was helpful, then you come off as a much more credible authority to refer the person to someone. Like I was in this position once, or I had a situation, not maybe not like yours, but I had a situation I couldn't handle it, and I went to my counselor or my therapist, and that was really helpful. I think that might be helpful for you as well, or something like that along that line. Yeah.
And I've seen in the college space, not so much. Well, actually, yeah, with athletes, where sometimes even if they haven't been involved in services before, well, they will like escort their friend or that person to the counseling service and maybe say, I'll go with you. I know if you
Mm-hmm.
have concerns or you're afraid, I'll go with you and wait in the waiting room, and then I'll be here when you get out and we can go back. So maybe even just providing that level of support to get them connected to professional services, but then also be there for them through it. That can sometimes be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is empathizing with that person, right? The fact that they trust you enough to come to you and share, what they're really going through, really thanking them for that, thanking them for understanding that you're a safe space for them. And then really giving them that nudge, like Shoyage and Dr. Lalonde was saying, well, I would really love to help you with this, but I think you might need to speak to someone in the counseling department, right? And just walk over there with them to kind of show them that you're there with them, you can support them, but you might not be the best resource for them at this particular time. And then we have one more question, and we're going to jump into, just the different resources and see if other questions come in as well. So John Brown asks, how can student athletes who get so discouraged because of the pandemic pull themselves from that back into mode of training? I'm referring to ones who does not see any point in training anymore, since there is no sure date when COVID will end. So basically, how can you find that motivation to get back in training mode when you don't see an end date to this pandemic?
That's real.
Mm.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like a lot of that is easier said than done because I can't imagine being in that position. But I would say keep consistent with your exercise because you don't want, something happens and your body's not equipped to do that anymore. So my first thing would say keep consistent in your exercise and your training.
And I would say stay present. We don't know what the future holds, and the past is gone. So all we have is really now. And so I recognize that it's tough and the motivation is not there because there's so much uncertainty. But if all you can control is your fitness, like Alicia was saying, and you can control just your passion, your love for the sport, try to hang on to that and allow that to be your motivation. I'm still going to do this because this is what I love, and I want to make sure that I'm ready when the time does come. I think that's a great quote. What was that? Fabulous. I heard if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So stay ready so that when it's time, you're not getting left behind. So and it may be something that you got to recite to yourself every day. Every day, one day at a time. Today's a different day. I'm gonna recommit as hard as it is, and hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
um but isn't that what we do every day though? Like we don't know there, we just we live with this um with this idea, or almost like a delusion, like we know what's going to happen all the time, and we can we have control. we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We really don't know if what we're working for, we're in school working for a degree. We don't know if we're going to get that degree, right? But there, we just hope and we work towards that. So it's kind of like this has brought to the forefront the fact that life is uncertain. You really don't know. And I would go back to the being present. Be present, and even though it seems like this hopeless, because you really don't know if you're going to be if you're going to be able to practice again. You really don't know all of those things. But you also really don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow. You really don't know if you're going to see somebody next week, but you still hope to see them. You still plan. You still, so this is just something else. I know it seems huge because it's global, but this is just something else. So being present, sticking back to that hope thing, just living in the moment, but at the same time, hoping for the best and keeping fit. Yeah.
And if I could just add one more quick thing, I know I keep reading like people like trying to set goals for after the pandemic is over. As they said, that could be helpful as you're like anticipating and looking forward to something. And so holding on. And I think that goes with that hope and the faith. And also, I just been telling my students, like, take one day at a time and do the best that you can with the time that you have. Because we're all doing the best that we can. And so that's listen, 10 minutes of training is better than 0 minutes of training if that's all you got tomorrow. But then maybe next week you got a little bit more. You got like 30 minutes and you're like, oh, okay, I can, like, so maybe it's just like taking one day at a time. And at the same time, like Alicia said, have some self-compassion, because each day is a brand new day to either do something different, increase that training time, or just have some goals for the future so you can look forward to something.
We don't do that enough. We don't give ourselves credit for what we did do. Everybody wants to go. I think I've seen a meme like everybody wants to go from 0 to 100, but there's 1 to 99 in between. If you're at 10, like you were saying, give yourself credit for being at 10 because you're not at 0 anymore. You don't always have to go from 0 to 100. So I think if we can just start to practice those things, yeah, we be collectively in a good place.
Yeah. Normalize small, consistent goals. Yeah, definitely. Kevon Parker here with UMES Track and Field. What exercises can I do to keep from feeling overwhelmed in the pandemic?
I mean, that's outside of my scope. But as an athlete in the past, I would say any exercise that works for you. It probably will. I know that it will increase your mood and just increase the way that you feel. So it could be from walking to running to jumping jacks to stretching to yoga. Any type of movement is going to definitely have a positive impact on your body and your mood overall.
Yeah.
Mental exercises too. So yes. So like affirmations, right? Yes, man. Like I can do this. Okay, so today is not the best day, but tomorrow is going to be better, right? I'm capable. I am worthy. It is rough, but I can overcome. So positive affirmations, you're telling yourself over and over and over, and we have self-fulfilling prophecy where our minds are going to search for things to happen if we condition it to look at life a certain way. So like a mental exercise is to practice positive affirmation, to try to confront those negative beliefs that keep you overwhelmed with positive ones and say it over and over until your mind starts believing it, right? And I think sometimes that's even harder than the physical exercise.
It is. Yes. Wow. Thank you all so much. I'm just loving this. So you've given so many great strategies, so many great tips, and help to normalize that conversation around mental health and just suicide in general. So how can they find a counselor or a therapist? Where are some places that they can find these individuals? On campus, off campus?
Okay, so as for here in Jamaica, because that's where I am, we have UWI, the University of the West Indies. You have 24-hour counseling services, actually. I'm not sure how it is now because of COVID, but apart from UWI, you have the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network, which I am a part of. And there's a lot of resources on our page, so I would just plug Jamhan, which is JAMHAN_JA on Instagram, and you'll see a great list of resources.
Thank you.
Cool. Is it like all students they have access? Is it? I'm just curious because I.
Oh, for UWI?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, all students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Where are some other places? And I know, Shoya, you're a therapist, so how can people get in contact with you if they're looking
Okay.
to?
So I have my online practice, which is called Be Kind to Your Mind. I guess I'll leave the info in the chat thing, but you can contact me at 1-767-316-4095. Right, and we can make appointments. If you're in Dominica and you go to the Dominica State College, come and knock on my door. Yeah.
Oh, there's other things like psychology today. Did I cut you off? Are you about to jump in?
No.
You're about to say what I was going to say. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Psychologytoday.com is one where you can kind of search by region. You can filter by your insurance. You can filter by any types of identities that you have that you would like to have your therapist specialize in. And then and I won't say them all because I know other people maybe will share, but I know Instagram has a lot of pages where like therapy for Black folks. There's one therapy for Black men. So there's a lot of different mediums and avenues that you can go through.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just add therapy for Black girls. There's also Therapy Den. Therapy Den is another good website that people can find therapists within their area. And then Beams Virtual Therapist Network. I don't know if you all have heard of that, but it's BAMS Virtual Therapist Network is another one that I think they are more than just therapy. They're just like a wellness site, but they can pinpoint therapists for you as well.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all. And of course, utilize the resources that your universities have as well, or your high school, like reaching out to the school counselor or the guidance counselor at your school to see what community resources they have available that you can utilize. Going to your college counseling center, or if your team has their own sports psychologists or counseling resources available, definitely utilizing those. But it really comes down to letting someone know, someone that you trust and that you see as a safe person, know what's going on with you so that they can definitely point you in the direction of different resources that might be available for you. And I think this is our last question. This just popped in the chat. I know you all touched on it, but Christina Cooper from UMES Track and Field, what advice would you give to student athletes having a hard time staying motivated during the pandemic? And honestly, that kind of hit on the question that I had to wrap it up as well. Like, what advice would you give to these students? Because I can imagine that it's hard to find that motivation.
I would say get a support system. And I feel like a lot of people mix like they confuse support system with like actual therapy. So your support system, they're not your therapist, but it's good to have that level of support and that level of like a safe space. So I think that's very important to have.
And to go off that, I just thought about this early on in the pandemic, to keep up workouts, like even just motivated with that. Me and my best friend used to do workouts over FaceTime together. And that was very motivating because if she didn't do that, I wasn't gonna do it. So I think going along with that, like support network, and like I have students all the time saying, yeah, I studied with my friend over FaceTime. That keeps me accountable. And so I think there is something in having that support, and even those virtual, staying connected and still trying to do some of those things together, because it's helpful when somebody else is with you and you're doing the same thing. That kind of keeps you motivated. Because like I said, I wouldn't even worked out if my best friend had said, okay, get up, get on the FaceTime right now. Even if it was 20 minutes, she was having me doing all kinds of workouts. I was like, what am I doing? But I was doing it. And, and it kept me going, actually, and kept me on a routine, actually, too.
I would say remember why you do it, right? If you can just focus on why you love what you do, why you always loved it, that might be a strong motivator. You know, not every season, you know, we would love it to be, but not every season is going to be a winning season. You know, or it might not be as best as you want it to be. But if you can just stay committed and you know remember why you love what you do and why you got involved in the first place, hopefully that's a strong enough motivator to keep going.
Yeah, and I think it's Confucius who says the man who says he can and the man who says he can't are both right. You are there are many things that you don't have control over, but you definitely have control over your feelings. You have control over how much you can do, of how you choose to see the world, right? Of what you choose to be and who you choose to become, right? So I think it's very important to understand also the power of your mind, okay? To know that, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, remember why you do it, but believe that you can do it. Like, I can become motivated. If this pandemic finish tomorrow, I'm going to be fine. If it don't finish tomorrow, I'm going to be fine, right? Just self-compassion, believe in yourself, right? Routines, try have your down moment if you want your down moment. Sometimes you have to have a little pity party, you want to cry and oh, why me, Lord, right? And that's fine. And you sit down and you just feel your emotions, allow yourself to feel, and that's fine, but don't stay there, right? So you brush off and you try again and you come again, and we're all going through this together. I'm doing it, they're doing it, you can do it, we're going to be fine. That's what I would say.
Yes, thank you all so much. And I know I keep saying last question, but this is a really good one. This is the last one for real. This is actually from a coach. So the coaches are often looked upon as parent figures, counselors, teachers, to solve conflict, etc. How do they adequately measure their roles when they themselves are conflicted with the traumatic feeling for staying COVID free? And this is from Coach Drummond from UMES.
Oh,
I'm gonna ask you again. Can you repeat that one?
Yes,
it's heavy.
Yes. So it says coaches are often looked upon as parent figures, counselors, teachers, and for solving conflicts, etc. How do they adequately measure their roles when they themselves are conflicted with the traumatic feeling for staying COVID free? So basically, how do they continue to support their athletes when they themselves are worried about, you know, contracting the virus and are dealing with it as much as their students are?
Yeah.
Self-care. And self-care sometimes don't look very pretty to people who give of themselves all the time, and it's your job to give of yourself. But the truth is, you cannot give of yourself if there is nothing to give. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So I would say boundaries, which is a big part of self-care. Being in touch with yourself, knowing what's going on with you. Am I able to handle this right now? Am I not able to handle this? Am I so stressed out that I can't hear what the student is saying? Or because I'm stressed out, I'm taking it personal. And, you know, so being in touch with what's going on with you and then creating boundaries to know that if I can't deal with that right now, I have to say no. not because I don't want to help, but because I am not able to help right now. And if I give of myself, it will not be the best quality of me, and I might not be in the best position right now. So, like, understanding yourself, knowing where you are in terms of your mental health, because you need to be able to function properly to be able to help people, right? So you have to take care of yourself, know what's going on with you, know when you need a little bit of space, know when you need to see somebody professionally, know when you need to sort out what's going on with you, so that you can adequately deal with people, with the little people that are looking up to you. You can't help them if you can't take care of it, if you're not taking the best care of yourself.
Yeah. And getting involved in professional services is definitely something that can help. I'm also a big advocate for mentorship and the mentor-mentee relationship. So maybe finding other coaches who maybe can speak to what their experiences are and give you some advice on how to deal and navigate just the coaching aspect outside of just being a human and going through it. And then also, as an athlete, one of my favorite coaches and the best coach ever that I say, shout out to Vince Anderson at Texas A&M. But he was a coach that was just transparent and he kept it 100. He was open and honest about where he was going through respectfully, right? It wasn't like we were, crossing boundaries, and obviously he wasn't sharing all of his life business with us. But if there was an off day, he could tell us that, and we could do the same. And so creating that open line of communication with your athletes, I think will go a long way. They'll appreciate you for it. You'll appreciate them for it, because it just creates a stronger connection. And just showing that it's okay not to have it all together will be powerful in and of itself. So I think just being transparent in that moment can be super helpful.
Thank you. So, of course, taking care of yourself, getting professional services for yourself, right? Kind of modeling what we want our students to be doing. So, thank you all so much for that and just for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us tonight. I definitely want everyone to know that the Achieve a Dream Foundation is also here to serve as a resource for you. You can find a lot of the resources that the panelists mentioned on our website, which is the achieveadreamfoundation.org. A lot of these resources will also be in the description added to this live once it is posted on our page. And also, just to know that we can serve as a resource in the form of matching you. Right now, we have our Student Athlete Therapy Fund that we are raising donations for. And what the Student Athlete Therapy Fund is, because we understand the importance of mental health and the need for mental health services, we are collecting donations to raise funds for student athletes that might need to seek a therapist. And we are also looking for therapists to partner with us so that you can provide services, of course, within the limitation and realm of your licensing, to student athletes as well. So if that's something that you are interested in, please, again, visit the website, which is the Achieve a Dream Foundation.org, and you can sign up to be a partner and therapist with us. And once we get student athletes to sign up, we will pay you based on the funds that are raised to provide the services to them. So we are trying to just remove that access barrier, while also trying to increase those help-seeking behaviors and reduce the stigma around mental health. So we are definitely here to serve as a resource for you as well. I think the question that we wrapped up with was a great one, because as I mentioned in the beginning, this will be a panel series. So today we focus more on providing student athletes with the resources that they need and helping them to identify how they might be impacted by the pandemic. We'll also have a series, a webinar, a webinar panelist discussion, there we go, that is specific to coaches, and also one that is specific to parents. So again, we're trying to take this holistic approach, this community approach, to kind of reducing the stigma and providing the resources for everyone that needs them. So again, I thank you all for your time. I thank you for your expertise. Please share any information with us that you would like for us to add in the description so people can get in contact with you, because the knowledge that you all shared tonight was just invaluable.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.